What's up, gamers? I'm the Lights, and the new Root of Nightmares raid has been completely picked apart to the point where Zemo solo flawless the whole thing, and even my sorry ass has nearly 24 clears, as well as a few solo encounters under my belt, as well as low mans and all kinds of stuff. We haven't talked about the guns from the raid at all here on the channel yet, so we're going to take a look at them here today, right after you subscribe for more Destiny videos twice a week. With the two raids we got last year, Vow the Disciple and King's Fall, we had two weird situations going on where the Vow weapons weren't that hyped up when they came out, but were pretty much all considered best in class just a couple months later. I'm sure some buffs had a little bit to do with that, and the King's Fall guns, on the other hand, were all really hyped up initially, but only a few of them have really stuck around. Root of Nightmares weapons, I've been a little weary to talk about with this in mind. Now that myself and the community have had some time to get acquainted with the weapons a bit, get a few patterns, and get them crafted, I feel comfortable appraising the usefulness and longevity of the weapon set. There's also the fact that we had a huge primary weapon balance patch come out very recently, and there are quite a few primary weapons in this set. But first, let's start with the exotic Conditional Finality, which could really get its own video, but it's already been hyped to hell, so I'll just go through it briefly. So this gun is a double-barrel shotgun that, despite what its RPM says, it's really just a 55 RPM aggressive frame shotgun with really high handling and not a whole lot else. This gun is both solar and stasis, but goes in your kinetic slot. One barrel on the first of the two shots does stasis damage, and landing most of the pellets from this shot freezes the target. The other barrel does solar damage, and hitting most of that shot's pellets causes an ignition. If you want, you can just spam reload the gun after just shooting one shot to always shoot stasis. It's a decent PvP shotgun because of the really good handling, and in PvE, it's a bit of a weird one. To me, it's fine. A lot of people I've heard raving over how fun it is, and that's awesome. And it's definitely not bad enough that I'm like wondering what you're doing if you're running it. It's just kind of gimmicky to me. Since the weapon's power budget is split between doing solar stuff and stasis stuff, it's not like it's best used with a solar build or a stasis build the way a gun like Collective Obligation from Vow is basically just a normal pulse rifle if you aren't playing Void. Conditional Finality really doesn't care what subclass you're playing, and that's both a strength and a weakness. As it just so happens, Ignitions and Freeze are unstoppable champion stunning effects now, so you have that extra functionality. Not jumping up and down at the idea of shotgunning unstops in GMs or anything like that, but it is value, and it's not like GMs are the only place champs ever show up, of course. GMs are just the first thing I think of. Because we're not playing into subclasses really at all for the reasons I mentioned, this gun is basically just a normal shotgun with really high handling and a shot that freezes and a shot that explodes. Which is good, but like not that crazy. Where this gun could really get crazy is if we get an artifact mod in the future that plays into freeze or ignite at all, as this gun would allow you to take advantage of those effects from different subclasses that don't normally have access to freeze and ignite. For now, though, it's just a balanced gun that's fun to use, and that's cool. Alright, now onto the legendaries. I'll start with the origin trait for this set, which is Harmonic Resonance, which gives you bonuses for having multiple Root of Nightmares weapons equipped. With two guns equipped, you get 10 handling and 3% bonus damage against Tormentors, Lucid Hive, and enemy guardians in their super. Super part is actually capped, by the way. It's been tested by dozens of people in the community and seems to just increase damage fall-off distance against players in their super. If you have a full set of 3 Root of Nightmares guns equipped, you get 20 handling, 10 reload with a 0.95 duration scaler, and 10% bonus damage to Tormentors and Hive guardians. Now, maybe I'm being harsh, but this is a pitifully weak origin trait in my opinion. I think most people won't just activate this origin trait on accident, and it's definitely not worth running a bunch of Root of Nightmare guns to activate it. The bonus for running 3 is quite good, don't get me wrong, so if you need to only minorly tweak your loadout to fit a 3rd Root of Nightmares gun in, then like, yeah, that might be worth it as long as, you know, of course the gun is still useful for what you're doing. But I think if it's any sort of reach at all, to run in any additional, like 1 or 2 guns from the set in your build, just let it be. Most of the guns are plenty strong to run without their origin trait working at all, trust me. A new thing we have on the Root of Nightmares guns now that I haven't had the chance to really interact with at all is now that you can enhance Adept weapons. If you complete any of the encounter challenges and come across some Adept loot from Root of Nightmares, you can now enhance the gun able to change out the barrel and magazine, the 2 minor perks. Can't change the masterwork and can't change the 2 major traits, but you can enhance them and put mementos on it and level it and all that stuff. So that's cool. Top of the docket here is Brair's Contempt, a new solar aggressive burst linear fusion rifle, which is dropping from the first encounter, the Cataclysm encounter. This is the same 3 burst archetype we saw with the Storm Chaser and Fire and Forget linear fusion rifles last year. And I'm known as a bit of a linear fusion rifle math nerd, math enjoyer, math enthusiast, and I've spent hours calculating damage for linear fusion rifles, and in my findings, the difference between this archetype and the traditional precision frames is minor to the point where it is always going to come down to the quality of the perk roll in terms of boss DPS from linear to linear. The usual drawback of the aggressive frames has always been a lack of ammo economy boosting perks like triple tap or fourth times. Brair's Contempt is no exception to this rule, but makes up for it with what is possibly the most stacked set of reload perks I've ever seen on a linear fusion rifle, with the standouts being Reconstruction, Demolitionist, Rewind Rounds, and Envious Assassin. Reconstruction is the best all-arounder in my opinion, filling your first mag up to double for every DPS phase. For Demolitionist, when we see Demolitionist in the third column on a heavy weapon, usually the first thought is Starfire Protocol Warlock, since they can constantly top the gun off with every grenade throw, since it takes a good few seconds to go through an entire linear fusion. A lot of classes can use Demolitionist as a way to never have to reload the gun in most damage phases, not just Starfire Warlocks. Anyway, you can get 2 grenade charges, like with Rain of Firebolts this season, the artifact mod giving you 2 firebolt charges, or Armamentarium, or whatever. This is essentially going to give you the ability to shoot 18 shots without manually reloading your gun by shooting 6 shots, throwing a grenade, another 6 shots, throwing a grenade, and then your final 6 shots. And that's nearly the entire reserves of this gun. You got Rewind Rounds also. Rewind Rounds fills up to 60% of the magazine based on how many hits you get with it. So as long as you're not missing, the way this will work out is if you don't miss, you'll get 10 shots total, which is a little worse than Reconstruction, but in really long damage phases where you're getting upwards of 16, 17, 18 shots, Rewind Rounds will be better than Reconstruction, since once you have to reload with Reconstruction in a damage phase, the perk doesn't do anything, because you need to not be shooting the gun for 4 straight seconds for Reconstruction to start doing its thing. Envious Assassin, finally, is basically just budget Reconstruction, but I mean, Reconstruction I just said was the best thing, so it's fine. Fourth column damage perk options aren't quite as enticing as the third column reload options. Focus, Fury, and Frenzy are both good, but will ultimately leave you a bit short of a perfectly rolled Reed's Regret, Taipan, or Cataclysmic in terms of DPS and total damage. Surrounded, on the other hand, is a massive 40% damage buff and 42% for Enhanced Surrounded, which, if you can keep up, big if you can keep up, will slingshot Brair's well past the other linear options for DPS. The trick is, of course, that you need to have 3 enemies within 8 meters for the entire damage phase, which I haven't tested much, but I suspect is probably possible in things like Riven, Caretaker, Avarok, Kali, stuff like that. I'm not saying Brair's is going to be the best option in any of those encounters, even if you can keep Surrounded procced. But if you can keep Surrounded procced, it will definitely be the best linear, which does give it a niche. So I'd recommend chasing and or crafting a roll of Reconstruction and Surrounded, paired with Enhanced Battery, Arrowhead Break, and your choice of Masterwork, mine being Handling. A roll of Reconstruction with Frenzy or Focus Fury would definitely be usable, but likely won't be the best DPS linear that any given player has. Ultimately, I don't think you necessarily need to chase this one, but it does have a niche that it could potentially be very useful for in the future. The Glockenball, Mykel's Reverance, is up next, a 450 RPM Strand Rapid Fire Frame sidearm, dropping from the second and third encounter, the Planet encounter, and Cision. It's alright. As with most sidearms, we got a nice high recoil direction, so we can go for max range on the barrel. We actually have really high stability as well, so you could even go as far as full bore if you wanted, though I'd go for Hammer Forged personally. For magazine, I'd recommend a mag perk like Appended or Extended, because 18 rounds at 450 RPM goes fast. If you want, though, any of the rage boosting options would probably be the next best choice. We're going to skip over to the fourth column next, where the Glockenballs has got some top options like Frenzy, which I often cite as my favorite and what I feel is the best primary weapon perk in the game. We've also got Swashbuckler here and Paracausal Affinity, which is the new perk for this raid, where we're getting 20% bonus damage for 6 seconds after getting any kill, matching the alignment of this weapon. That alignment is to say light or dark. So since the Glockenballs is a strand, for example, any stasis or strand kill, whether it's your heavy weapon or your subclass or the gun itself, will give you that damage bonus. This is a fairly middle-of-the-road perk, in my opinion. I'd gladly trade the 5% extra damage for 100 handling and 100 reload any day and just go with Frenzy. But this is one of the easiest kill-based conditions to meet that we've seen in a perk because it's so broad. So I do still think it is absolutely a valid choice here, even if it isn't my first one. Swashbuckler is going to have a higher damage buff than either at max stacks, though I wouldn't bother with it unless you're going to be trying to play into a melee build in some way, and I don't feel there really are any strong strand melee builds at the moment, so Hatchling is also here, and Hatchling, I feel, has really been riding the coattails of its big brothers Headstone, Chill Clip, Incandescent, and Volt Shot, but is really not as strong as any of those other subclass tie-in perks, in my opinion. It's fine, it's not useless, but it's a clear rung below the other options to me. The third column here really hammers home Frenzy as the choice for me, though, because there is no good reload perk anywhere in sight. Rewind rounds is here, but not something I'm excited about on a gun like this. Perpetual Motion does give 10 to 20 reload, so that's nothing to write home about. And that's really it. This fact is, like I said, what really hammers home Frenzy for me as the choice in the fourth column, since it gives 100 reload speed when active, completely negating this weakness and allowing us to instead go for a perk like Pugilist for 10% melee energy on every kill, or Unrelenting, which would be my personal choice of what I'll be crafting, topping up your health every few kills, which is going to be quite welcome considering the engagement distance you'll need to play at with a sidearm. Roll I'll be crafting is Hammerforged Rifling, Extended Mag, Unrelenting, and Frenzy with a range masterwork. Meta consensus for me is, it's fine. I wouldn't FOMO over it, it's fine. Dropping from all encounters, unfortunately, we have Koraxis Distress, a 140 RPM rapid-fire grenade launcher. So grenade launchers aren't that great. The usual copium is to get a grenade launcher roll for boss damage, but I think a healthier way to look at this thing would be to find the most fun set of perks possible for it, and you can at least have some laughs with it crapping on dregs outside of Devrim's church. And for that, it gets chain reaction in the third column, so you can get Hatchling in the fourth column with it. And that sounds wicked fun. We're done here. Okay, the DPS roll is going to be Hard Launch, Spike Grenades, Reconstruction, and Frenzy. Have fun pissing off LFG groups. Grenade launchers still aren't good. Dropping from the planet's encounter, we have Rufus's Fury, which is a 720 RPM strand auto rifle, and despite having a name I really just can't take seriously, it's probably the best gun from this set. Auto rifles are hot off of a 25% PvE damage buff against red and orange bar enemies, and Rufus here is exploiting that with help from what I consider to be the best role a primary weapon can get in this game, which is Demolitionist and Frenzy. I feel this is the clear choice for this gun as well, but we've also got Paracausal Affinity back on this one. We've got Adrenaline Junkie, which is a classic pairing with Demolitionist, as well as Hatchling, which I still don't like, but it's here. Demolitionist I also think is the clear choice in the first column, but we also have Rewind Rounds and Reconstruction here on this one, which can potentially get pretty good value thanks to the humongous base magazine size of auto rifles. This one holds 55. Compare that to a similar rate of fire weapon, like a 750 RPM aggressive frame submachine gun, which usually has around a base magazine size somewhere just south of 30, usually like 27, 28. And at that point, that is, you could probably take a look at like Rewind Rounds or Reconstruction, get 110 shots in your auto rifle, doesn't sound too bad. Keep in mind though that Reconstruction does require you to have stopped shooting the gun for about 4 seconds, and then it starts filling the gun back up, so it won't be as effective if you're using Rufus as your workhorse, which is definitely my recommended use case. Overall, I still think Demo Frenzy is the move, which I'll be pairing with Ricochet Rounds and a Range Masterwork for some added reach, as well as Arrowhead Break to help fix Rufus's 56 base recoil direction. This gun is good. I would definitely recommend you go get one, seeing as how we got 2 strand auto rifles this season. I expect we won't see another one for quite a while, since Bungie will likely take some time to fill out our arsenal of strand weapons a bit more before releasing any more strand autos. And since Rufus is the best strand auto rifle now, maybe just the best auto rifle period, it's likely going to stay that way for a while. Primaries are mostly a preference thing though, and there are quite a few good ones now, so I wouldn't FOMO over it, but if you're running the raid every now and then, I think Rufus is a great choice for your once-a-week free red border purchase. Now we have the Nessa's Oblation Void Slug Shotgun dropping from the first two encounters, and is a gun that is a bit behind the times, I'm afraid. Not long ago, slug shotguns were the DPS meta, and Nessa's Oblation is probably the best there is for slug DPS rolls in the game. Unfortunately, we are more than a year separated from that meta, nearly 2 years separated from that meta. It is still viable from time to time in certain situations and certain encounters, so we will still be kitting this thing out for boss damage. For our boss melting perk, we have Frenzy, Vorpal, and Focus Fury to choose from. Frenzy has the benefit of 100 handling when active, something that's very welcome for slug swapping, but isn't quite as valuable here due to the gun's high base handling, around 67 at base. But with Frenzy's 15% damage buff, it's not really like we're losing anything. We've got Focus Fury, which is a 20% damage buff that can be refreshed infinitely by hitting crits before the timer runs out, but will always require you, no matter what, to shoot a few unbuffed shots initially, making it only eclipse the 15% damage perks in situations where you're dumping all or most of your reserves, that is to say, shooting for a really long time. Those 15% perks being the aforementioned Frenzy and Vorpal Weapon. Vorpal Weapon being my personal pick, since it has absolutely no condition to work around other than just be shooting a boss. For magazine perks in the third column, we've got 4 key players here. We've got Demolitionist, which isn't quite as good as it normally is in this column, since if you're slugging or double slugging, that's probably all you're doing, and therefore not throwing grenades for free reloads, but it's still good, and you definitely could do that. We have 4th Time's the Charm, which is a super underrated perk on slug shotguns, since the returned bullets from 4th Times come from thin air, massively bolstering your ammo economy. We have also got Envious Assassin, which again is functioning like a budget version of Reconstruction, which is here and is really the clear choice, even if 4th Time's the Charm's ammo economy benefits are nice. We've got Special Finisher in the game, and it's as easy as ever to use that to keep you topped off. So, we'll then take our Reconstruction Vorpal roll and pair that with Assault Mag for more deeps through faster rate of fire, though a pure mag perk like Tac, Extended, or Appended is also great. And then for Barrel, anything that gives handling or range without penalizing the other, like Corkscrew, Hammerforged, or Fluted. I personally will be crafting Reconstruction Vorpal with Assault Mag, Fluted, and a range Masterwork. I guess I'm also obligated to mention the meme roll this gun gets, which is Destabilizing Rounds and Repulsor Brace together. Since Volatile procs off of Destabilizing Rounds, and Volatile is a Void debuff, this gun can give you an Overshield on its own, which is funny, but in reality, it's not even cope good. This is a tricky one. Like I said, if this gun came out like a year or two ago, with these perks, it would be a must-have. Everybody would be talking about it. Everybody would be talking about how you needed to go get one. Like, LFG groups wouldn't let you play with them if you didn't have this gun. We are, however, long separated from that time. But at the same time, it is the clear best in its niche. So if you really want to be thorough, it's worth a chase. But the odds of this thing actually being relevant ever are really low. Acasia's Dejection is a solar trace rifle dropping from the 2nd and 3rd encounter right into direct competition with the fan favorite Retraced Path. Trace rifles I like to think of as a primary with no downsides. They do good damage, have big magazines, have quick reloads, near perfect recoil direction, and good range. They trade all of these advantages for being the only primaries that use special ammo. That being the case, I'd still recommend the usual reload perk and damage perk, but you don't even really need either. So there are no wrong answers, honestly. I mean, like Hollow Denial, arguably the most popular trace rifle in the game, is most often used with Lead from Gold and Repulsor Brace, which are both utility perks. In the 3rd column on Acacia's here, I mean, I guess I wouldn't go Hipfire Grip, but everything else has merit. Perpetual Motion is some decent stat bumps with really good uptime. Field Prep is extra reserves to help keep you topped up. Rewind rounds can make your already large magazine feel even bigger. Keep Away is my top pick if you use your trace rifle as a primary, like most people. And Acacia's is the first time I'd actually rather have Envious Assassin over Reconstruction in this video. Though I don't really like either of them here. Here's what I will say. A huge upside to using a double special setup right now, a strategy that it seems like more and more people have opened up to by the day, is keeping a machine gun topped up with heavy ammo, since your heavy ammo drops are increased when you're using double special. If you're pairing Acacias with a machine gun in such a case and getting a bunch of kills with the machine gun, your machine gun kills are going to be proccing Envious Assassin and filling up your trace while you're slaying with the machine gun. Reconstruction is basically the same thing, except you just have to wait instead of being able to be proactive about it and kill things. In column 4, I think the perk most people are going to immediately look to is Incandescent, myself included. The thing is, though, I'm going to bring up Retraced Path again. Retraced Path is also craftable, is much easier to get, and gets Incandescent with Subsistence. Our roll, I'd argue, is much better than anything that Acacia's gets, to be quite honest with you. My favorite perk, Frenzy, is here, but again, because this gun's insane base stats, it's basically just the 15% bonus damage, which is good. But Retrace Path gets it too. It's also not as good as Paracausal Affinity, which is here, and in my opinion, the best perk for this gun. Just going for bullet damage, I think, is the only way you separate this thing from Retrace Path, until you realize Retrace Path also gets Golden Tricorn. All told, I'll be crafting my Acacias with Looted Barrel, Tactical Battery, and a Range Masterwork for the maximum overall boosts to stats. Then I'll go for Paracausal Affinity and Keep Away. And if you're wondering if this gun is any good, I know a lot of people that have become huge Trace Rifle stands this year. And well, I mean, I think it's good. It's just worse than Retraced Path. Well, that'll do it, folks. That's the Root of Nightmares weapons done and dusted. I hope you learned something, or at the very least had your opinions affirmed here today. If you did, or you just enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, though I appreciate you sticking around to the end either way. Deuces.